Okay, so I want to talk about brand identity creation quickly, and apart from the things I've talked about in the last video, I will be talking about the logo types we have. I've mentioned the things that you find when you talk about brand identity creation: logo, typography, color palette, and then consistency around all of these things. But there are important concepts around branding. Sometimes some people change some things in their identity, they change some things, add some things, and they say branding, they say rebranding, rebranding, and all. Some people don't know the difference. So there is something called rebranding, and then there's another thing called debranding. Rebranding, debranding. But people mistake the two together because it has to do with an existing brand, then they change their mind and then they do something differently from what they had been doing before that time. So, what is rebranding? Rebranding is basically when there is a total or a large percentage of overall of what was existing before, right? It has to do with taking a major part of what people are familiar with, ditching it, and then picking up something new and presenting it to the people. That's rebranding. So I'm leaving space for um, retaining some things. That's why I'm not saying um, um, a total overall. Okay. Debranding, I will show you instances of this that you're familiar with. Debranding has to do with reducing elements of what is in the existing brand identity. Reducing, decrease, debranding, to reduce clutters, to reduce noise, to reduce elements in something like this. Okay. One familiar example you can relate with quickly is MTN. Initially, MTN started with a brand identity of, that contains three colors: yellow, blue, and I think a dot of red on the T, or maybe below it. Yeah, below the T. Three colors and then the text MTN. But recently, they announced that they are they may have announced that we are rebranding, but in the real sense, according to designers, in the designers dictionary, what MTN has done is debranding. They took off these colors and then they stuck to black and black alone. And then instead of extra fancy designs to the M, T, and N, they stuck to just writing it out plainly in black text, and then there's a shape around it, and that's all. That is a new identity, and that is what they are doing. So in what case do brands debrand? Big brands debrand when people are already familiar with what they used to portray themselves, to when people are already familiar with what their identity was. Then they feel like, okay, now it's time to declutter. People already know us. Then when we introduce something less noisy, something less um, distracting, something less busy than what we were doing before, people will still recognize us. Brands that have done this: MTN, um, Apple has done it in the past. Warner Bros. As the production company that handles Batman and some movies, Warner Bros. Has done it. Burger King has done it also. Let me show you some of this. Okay. Okay, Pepsi has done it. This one happens to be their former logo. that has this PEPSI. But now they have decided to now retain just the red, white, and blue. But whenever you see this, you still know that this is still Pepsi, and that's Pepsi. This is an instance of how Apple has evolved over time, from using multicolors, rainbow style, to the gradients of blue, gradient of silver, and then this to just black. The branding is when you introduce simplicity, but you are still retaining elements of what people are familiar with. That is it. An example is Pringles also. Pringles created these strands of hair to indicate that truly this is a mustache, this is someone's hair, and then we can see the yellow text, black stroke around it, the bow tie, to what they now have, just a black mustache and Pringles as okay, this is it below, as simple as it can be. People are already familiar with this. When they see this, they can still tell that this is Pringle, this is Pringles, the brand, and then there won't be any confusion, there won't be any okay. So another instance is here, Burger King. I mentioned Burger King. So the representation of Burger King is supposed to be the first layer of the burger or the bread, and then the Burger King is supposed to be an indication of the vegetables or anything in the middle of the burger, and then the last thing, then this blue. So they just decided maybe there is really no need for this blue, there's really no need for the extra light around, or something to show a reflection of light around the burger, something. Why don't we just draw our shape and let's go? People are already familiar with Burger King, so there's no problem. This is Warner Bros. So this previous one will give you an element of a metallic feel, golden feel. It looks luxurious and all, but so one other thing that motivates Debranding is the flexibility of logos, the reusability or usability of logos that you make. So imagine if I have this logo, and imagine if I have this version, for example. It's easier for me to place this simpler version on any background than this. I can place this on gold, I can place this on blue, I can place this on white. Of course it's on white. I can place it on any color by just using the other variants of their logo. I'm sure they will have a black variant and all. But imagine this, how flexible will this logo be when there's shadow, there's a ray of light, there's the 3D feel and all. People are moving away from complex logo styles to something simpler now. So again, that is the branding. It's just a concept for your knowledge. It's just something you need to know, and when you see something you can recognize that this is it. That is the branding. As I said, rebranding means maybe we were using a rectangular shape before, we now want to use a circular shape. That will not be counted as debranding. That is rebranding. Rebranding. Okay, so we can even tell from what this is. It says the latest rebrand is a debrand. People see it outside as though these guys are rebranding, but in the real sense they are debranding. They are taking away complexities from their logos, and they are sticking to simpler elements that can work on anywhere they use them. I don't know if their motivation is usability of the logo, or they just feel like we are big and big enough, we don't need all these complex things to be. Look at Saint Laurent, for example. Now the font is not even readable. It only takes people who already recognize them as a luxurious fashion brand to tell that this is them. But imagine what it looks like now. Less noise, simple as ABC, and that's all. So yeah, that's just a brief on rebranding and debranding. And of course, branding. Branding is the first step. There was nothing before, you are creating something for them. That is branding. Over time, they have expanded their services, they have some new target audience, they are reaching some new regions, and they want to cover them with their branding. Then they can say rebranding, right? For example, now their old logo was black. Now they say we are now focusing on is it green revolution, preserving the is it the atmosphere or something like that, recycling. This current theme around environmental friendly designs. Therefore, they say, okay, let us move to green so that we can now say this is our focus now. And they change to green. That will be rebranding. So maybe in the process of changing to green, they now added the logo of a forest of plenty trees. And then 10 years later, they now say, okay, it's too busy. We don't need to put plenty trees in a logo to signify that we are interested in preserving the natural forests, wildlife, and everything. Let's just use one icon of a tree. In that case, that is debranding. Let's say they used 10 sticks of tree to represent that before, and then they are now using one. They have removed 9, so they are now sticking to one. That is debranding. All right. So that's that about that. So quickly, I will talk about the types of logo designs that we have. So it's not enough that someone says, I want to design a logo. This is what I do, and this is when I need it. These are my colors. Give me a logo. No. Sometimes some of the questions we ask as brand identity designers, we ask what you do, who your target audience is. We ask what your vision is, your mission. We ask what your goal is. We ask if you have some logos outside that even outside your industry that you like. We ask the kinds of who your competitors are, because we want to see what the kinds of logo they use look like. And we send you a list of the types of logos that we have, and we ask you which would you prefer for your brand. If they don't know, we advise based on them, right? So number 1, there are 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you can come across another list where there will be 8, where there will be, but I assure you that you will find at least 5 on this list everywhere, on every correct list. So the first one is word mark. So what is word mark? Word mark is, as it implies, the word or the name of the brand is the logo of the brand. The word or the logo or the name of the brand is the logo of the brand. So sometimes I can pull up a list, but because of time I won't do that. I can pull up a list where you'll see an example of a logo under word mark, under letter mark. Do you understand? Under word mark, under letter mark. But the actual difference is letter mark also relates to word mark, but letter mark deals with the initials of the brand. So in this case, assuming Coca-Cola uses C and C, we will see Coca-Cola under letter mark and not word. So it's an obvious difference, right? A word and a letter. A word is made up of different letters, right? So it means a word mark is writing out the name of the brand in full, and then that's the logo. So it could not be fancy with the fonts as in the case of Coca-Cola, in the case of eBay. So this is a wrong representation to show for Google, because the ideal logo of Google is the GOOGLE, not this extracted version of it, right? Word mark, Google, eBay, Coca-Cola, and there are more like that too. Samsung. Samsung will be grouped under something else. Why? Because the name was not just written out alone. There is a version. Okay, the new version of Samsung is just a name alone. The previous version has some shape around it. So the moment you add a shape to a name, it's now a different thing. You can see why we don't have Amazon under word mark. So letter mark is supposed to be initials. That's why I won't agree that Netflix is letter mark, but word mark. This is correct because CNN and HP, their initials. HP is Hewlett Packard, right? This is the logo, H and P. Letters out of the word make the logo, as letter mark. CNN, letters out of the word make the logo as letter mark. Pictorial design, for example, this is when the icon you use exactly represents the meaning of the name of the brand. It is as straightforward as it sounds. Apple is apple. Shell is shell. And this shell is the one you find on the beach. This is how it looks like, or a representation of how it looks like. Twitter has to do with tweets, from the sound of birds. Their former logo is an example of pictorial mark, right? But their new logo falls under something else now. Okay, maybe we can place it under pictorial mark too, because it is what? X. So we can say pictorial mark represents the letter X and it is X. Or maybe we can say letter mark. No, I won't group it under letter mark. So pictorial mark, X for X, Twitter for the sound of bird. Abstract mark, from what the word abstract means. It means there is no correlation between the name of the brand and the icon or the logo that represents that brand. Pepsi, for example, I can't trace what the word Pepsi means, but the word Pepsi does not mean red, white, and yellow. It does not mean a round shape divided into three. No. Nike does not mean this swoosh. They call it Nike swoosh, something like that. Yeah. So this thing is, you rather call it a mark, a swoosh, or a valid something, or you understand, but it never means Nike, Nike, same as Adidas. That is when you just pick something random, something abstract to represent your brand. It has nothing to do with the name of the brand. Mascot logo. Mascot logo is when you represent a brand by something that has to do with the brand, however in an illustrated form. KFC, for example, now we can tell that this is the representation of the owner of the brand. I can't remember his name. This is a representation of the brand. Pringles also may want to imply that the owner of the brand is a big man. There is an indication that this character is not slim. You understand? So this may be a representation of the owner. Wendy's, this may be Miss Wendy or Mrs. Wendy. I can't tell. But a mascot is when you infuse a representation of. Okay, so in football, almost all the football clubs, or all of them, have mascots. Almost all of them have mascots. For Arsenal FC, for example, Arsenal's mascot is a dinosaur. So there's a guy that comes on every match. They puts on the dinosaur costume and he walks around, greets people, and that's the club's mascot. So whenever something that represents a brand is illustrated and added to the logo, it's a mascot logo. That's the idea. Combination logo is straightforward. It's a combination of text and icon together. So again, an example is Adidas. It can feature here, but most times Adidas only works with this icon without this. So ideally, I won't even tag Puma as combination logo, because most times we only see this Puma icon, the animal icon, without the letters. A perfect example is Amazon. You will not likely see Amazon without this yellow icon. Sometimes MasterCard, we see this red and yellow intersection without the text. So any logo that you can't separate the logo, you can't separate the icon from the text, is a combination mark or combination logo. And the last one is emblem logo. Emblem logo is it is used by schools, it is used by institutions, and the way you recognize it is any logo or any icon that a brand uses that has a surrounding object, a surrounding shape around it, it is automatically grouped as an emblem. It features on coat of arms of countries. It features on institutions' websites where they, for example, Harvard has maybe this shape, and then there is some flowers here and here around it. So any icon that you create, and then you put anything around it to signify an emblem, it's called an emblem logo. So all of these types are not just random names and everything that you can just say, okay, I like this, I like that. Some work for some brands more than the other. Fashion brands, for example, can deal with word mark perfectly. They can deal with abstract mark. An example is, no, not abstract. I mean combination mark, right? An example is Lacoste, or Lacoste or something that use crocodile as an icon, and then there's the name under it, right? Some fashion brands only use letter mark or word mark. The text is the logo, the initials of the name is the logo, right? A football club, for example, will not or will or football clubs don't really use word marks. They use emblem logos. Emblem logos. So some of these are particular to some brands more than the other, right? So that's just a brief introduction, or a brief concept, a brief explanation on branding, debranding, rebranding, and the types of logo design based on what the business does, or based on what they want, or based on the advice they're asking you to give them. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.